Welcome to Coffee Talk with Liquidshano 1973, an inspirational podcast about the ups and downs of life and everything in between. Here's your host, Shane Lakita.
Hey, hello, friends. It's me, Shane. I'm here on the podcast here during our times when we are locked in boxes and not really going very many places due to the coronavirus and COVID-19. But, we're here, and I'm here to be able to create some sort of consistency, some sort of normalcy for all of you who are whatever you're trying to be able to do. So if you're a mom and dad who are at home doing some homeschooling, working from home on computers and whatever else, I hope that this can be an outlet for you. I'm hoping that you're able to listen to this podcast here and be able to find some solace or some strength or some inspiration or whatever else, just to be able to find a light in a pretty dark time, or what can be a pretty dark time. And I know for all of you healthcare workers, truck drivers, ambulance workers, first responders, police, or anybody like that are out there on the front lines that are not able to go home and quarantine from home and be in the confines of their home with their families and whoever else, that are in the trenches doing everything that they need to do to make sure that the public is safe, you're safe, I'm safe. We have the things up and running for us to be able to do things like this podcast, to live in a free society, and for us to be able to do everything that we need to do. They're in the trenches. They're on the front lines. I know everybody here, especially me, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Because if it wasn't for people like you who so selflessly give to the community and the task at hand, we wouldn't be able to do anything of what we're trying to do. And to be quite honest with you, this pandemic might be at a much worse rate and different place than what it is right now if it wasn't for folks like you that are out there doing the things that are necessary for us to be successful, doing the things that are necessary for us to be safe. So thank you. If you're listening to this podcast as you're driving your police car or you're in the hospital on a break, whatever it is, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And I truly mean that. Okay, so today's podcast is going to be a pretty quick one. I think so anyway, depending on how deep into the conversation that we go. But I was watching this Sunday on 60 Minutes. I was watching an interview with an amazing, amazing person in Brene Brown. Now, if you know who Brene Brown is, you know that she does many, many different things for personal connections, for business attitudes, all the different things that she's trying to do. You know that she's there to be able to invest in people and help people find who their true inner selves are, but also having the courage to be able to reach out to others to be able to do so. And back in the day, if you haven't seen her TED Talk, the TED Talk that she did, that's probably the most famous TED Talk that she did, was basically on a TED Talk stage, and she was up there. I think it was about a 20-minute TED Talk that was on there. And basically, if you look up on YouTube, you can find it. You can just look up The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown on YouTube and check it out. It's really, really great. We're going to talk a little bit about that today in the space and the dynamic of where we're living right now. So we got two different things going on that Brene brings to the table a lot that have really, really inspired me and continue to move forward in my space and where I'm living with my family and with all the people that I'm surrounded by, the business owners that I work with. I'm a consultant to different people in the business that are on shutdown right now or pretty much just very limited capacity to be able to open their doors to be able to service customers because they are considered to be essential personnel. So it's really tough to be able to balance things out there. And when you're a business owner, a lot of times you're tough. You're tough as nails. You're out there doing what you have to do. You're focused on the task at hand. You're getting the things done that you have to get to. And that aspect that Brene talks a lot about is vulnerability is considered a sign of weakness. And society labels it as a sign of weakness, but she labels it as a sign of strength. Because when you're vulnerable and you struggle and you go through the muck and mire of all the things that maybe society has based it on, or this image that they bring to the table, that they say you have to be this strong, purposeful, crazy, strong-willed, adamant individual, that vulnerability is definitely a sign of, yeah, you know what, I'm struggling with this, or I fall down, or I make a mistake, or something that I'm doing that I can't necessarily get to because the circumstances aren't letting me at this moment in time. I love the fact that she talked a lot about, out of all the best-selling books that she has, the brand new podcast that she just came out with, all the different things, the TED Talks, the videos, all the different successes that she had, how many failures that she's had to fill a room with, she said, whether it's declinings of different speaking events or different things that she did scholastically or whatever it was that she had referenced, all the different times that she's been told no. It could almost be overwhelming for anybody else. But then they brought a couple friends in of her friends that were on there. And if you haven't had a chance, check it out on 60 Minutes. It's a really good piece. But her two friends came in and they were saying, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? And what she had talked about was that she wants to change the landscape and have a conversation around things like vulnerability and human connection and those kind of things. And they both looked at her like, okay, you're a crazy person. But her stoic and vigilant ability to be able to say, I believe in what I'm talking about here, inspired them. And now look where she's at, right? So all the different things that she's been through, the downs, the falls, the pitfalls, the failures, the ability to not be able to move the business forward or her speaking forward or maybe not relating to other people. Once she hit that TED Talk, she took off and that was it. And the sky's the limit from there. And a lot of people are very much in tune with what Brene Brown brings to the table. And now she has the #1 podcast in the country over the past month or so because she just released it. So the two things that I want to talk about here are vulnerability and the human connection. Those are really important pieces to what she brings to the table. These are the things that she talks about as being very important to our journeys, our human psyche, where we're at, and how for us to be successful, to be able to park in those two spaces and be able to really leverage it. And if you think about it, in the dynamic of where we're at right now with COVID-19 and coronavirus and the news and everything else that we have, these two things are so important in today's society right now. So vulnerability and connection. So vulnerability, if you think about it, let's think about the ways people process through. I know in the last podcast, we talked about the different stages of grief, right? And if you're grieving something or you're in a place where you're emotional about something, what happens a lot of times whenever it's like maybe a pandemic or something going on around you? Some people might look at you and say, well, you're being weak about that. Be a strong parent, be somebody that is a support or a force to be reckoned with, or somebody that can fight through the things that you have to. And we talked about in the last podcast about it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. Why are we afraid to be able to admit the fact that we're scared or we are intimidated or we're nervous or we've got these different situations going on where we've never been through this before and we're confused and we're apprehensive and all these different feelings. But if we exert those feelings a lot of times, society in general might look at you and say, listen, pal, like seriously, like you suck it up. You can go do what you have to do. And I know it's more probably a male thing than a female, but here's the thing. We're all wired a certain way. The vulnerability piece of it means you're human. The vulnerability piece of it means you got to park there for just at least a little bit to be able to say, okay, what am I really feeling here? And why am I feeling this way? Am I confused? How come I'm confused? Am I not as informed? Or am I confused because I'm angry? Am I confused because I refuse to accept the fact that it's happened? Or am I confused or vulnerable or those kind of things? Am I confused because there's different media outlets that are giving different types of information? Or the different shows that I watch on TV or the different news outlets that I'm watching are telling me all different things. Some are telling me that it's not that bad. Some are telling me that it's the end of the world. Like the confusion portion of it may not even be caused by us, but by other external factors that are causing us to be confused. But at the end of the day, it's okay to be confused, become informed. Vulnerability is something that I love in a person. I love the fact when I see somebody or talk to somebody, one of the things that I had talked to about with a good friend of mine back in the day is that we had talked about being social media influencers and really going out there to be somebody that's going to make an impact in the world through social media, through different posts, through different stuff that we're doing. And we always put on these great big faces and these great big smiles, and they're beautiful and they're ready to go, and everything's all, hunky-dory and on the forefront of everything, and you're looking at that surface level image of what you're seeing. But there may be other stuff that goes on. And what they find a lot of times is that whenever somebody bears themselves back to talk about the struggles that they're going through, whether it's weight loss, whether it's professionally, whether it's any of these things, when they start talking about the vulnerability and the struggles that they have, they find the traction of people to connect with them so much more than when they're saying everything is so great. Now, outside of maybe celebrities and things like that, people just follow to follow. But at the end of the day, let's say, for instance, you're a blogger, or you're a podcaster, or you're somebody that's in a mid-level, not the celebrity aspect of the things, right? But the mid-level person that's telling their story or sharing their aspect of their life or doing the different things that they do. Even me in my world of podcasting or social media or anything, anytime that I talk about the things that I don't necessarily have a grasp on or things that I'm struggling with to mentally prepare myself or move forward with, those are the things that resonates with people. They go, you're a real person. You're a real individual. I get it. You're being vulnerable right now. Now, you may have some on some sides that might say, here's a tip and pointer. Be tough. Go. Suck it up. Go do what you have to do. Listen, we're in a society where we get whatever, all these different opinions that might come out. But at the end of the day, the most emotion and the most traction that I get from any of the social media stuff that I do or podcasts that I do are the ones that I say, here's why I'm struggling, or here's how I'm struggling, and I need to do things to be able to move forward, or here's how I'm feeling. Now listen, a lot of people don't like to talk about their feelings. Right? They just don't. People don't like to really just broadcast that out there, because if you do talk about feelings, you might get a couple camps of people that might come at you. One of them is going to be the big hugs, and they treat you differently, and they're like, oh, we love you so much. It's okay. Everything's going to be all right. And then you get this overabundance of this support aspect of it, which is okay. It's all right. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, whoa, listen, I'm getting through it. I'm pushing forward. But I just wanted to let you know this is why I might be struggling with what I'm struggling with. Or you have the other camp that they're looking at you going, feelings? Like, seriously? Come on. You're just putting yourself out there for attention. Or you're just putting yourself out there for people to try to grab onto. So you got the negatives and the positives. Right? I mean, we if you play at all in this space of social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of these things, you get the wide gamut of opinions of everybody trying to be able to talk to you or get into the psyche of where you're at or whatever. All these different opinions come up. Right? It's okay. At the end of the day, here's the thing about vulnerability. Vulnerability, as Brene says, creates strength. It's part of the journey of what you're going through. Vulnerability is a moment in time when you might fail, or you might fall, or you might struggle, you might skin your knee, or you might not necessarily be as successful, but you're pushing forward and you're diving in and you're doing everything you can to be successful, but you're not as successful at that moment in time. So vulnerability is the frustration, the struggle, the pain, the suffering you might go through, or the time strains, or whatever. Maybe it's you're not spending as much time with your family, but you're continuing to stay focused on the goal and the task at hand. And you don't take your eye off the prize, and you continue to move forward. You're brave, and you put yourself out there to do it. I feel as if you don't put yourself out there and you live just in that comfort, the comfort of the four boxes or the four walls that you're living in, the comfort of those four walls only gets you so far. But if you step outside of the comfort of those walls and you become vulnerable and you put yourself out there and you do things that you don't necessarily think that you can or think that you should or those kind of things, but you know you want to internally, deep down inside, to say, this is something I really want to do, then go and do. Be vulnerable. Take chances. Step outside of your comfort zone. What better time than right now while we're all pretty much quarantined, locked in boxes and cages, which is how I feel. That's not literally how it is, but yes, that's how I feel. As we're all in these walls and confines of our homes, working from home, on virtual meetings or whatever, take the time to be vulnerable and do something that maybe you never could find time to do. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's something that you wanted to be able to do with knitting. Maybe you wanted to become a cross stitcher. Maybe you wanted something to do where you wanted to actually work out at the gym or in your own home gym, and you wanted to do a certain regimen of exercise. And guess what? Now you have time to do so. So there's no excuses, but just do it. Step outside of your comfort zone and go and do it. Take the chance to be able to start the momentum of things that you've always wanted to do or that you've always wanted to start and create. It's funny because I was reading this article where they said companies that began back during the last recession that we had back in, I think it was 2004 or 2005 or whatever it was, during that time period where the recession really hit and we had some pretty hard times financially, some of the companies that were created during that time are people that stepped outside of the box and wanted to create solutions rather than just sit in the muck and the mire and feel the suffering that goes all around you, the depression that goes all around you. And they just wanted to step up and be able to say, hey, how can I be creative and step out of my box that I'm living in and just accept reality for what it is. So vulnerability goes through all different phases, right? This is talking about vulnerability of you doing something that you always wanted to, or something that you always wanted to accomplish or achieve or work towards or anything like that. That's one side of it. The other vulnerability is the actual feelings that you go through when you're going through it. How are you feeling right now? As you watch the news, as you can't see your elderly parents, as you can't go down the road to the grocery store without having to be in single file 4 at a time or whatever else, as you can't fly on planes, and we can't really go different places like restaurants and bars to be social or any of those things, how are you feeling? Because we have to acknowledge that. We can't just ignore that. We can't just maybe, some people do process through like with humor or even through some anger or depression or things like that. But how are you processing through that? Like how are you feeling? Really take inventory of where you're at. Are you sad? Are you depressed? Are you down in the dumps? Write those things down. Write those feelings down of how you're feeling at this moment in time, because to acknowledge them is the first step towards trying to recover from them. You have to acknowledge your feelings, acknowledge your vulnerabilities, acknowledge where you're at right now to be able to even try to move forward. Because if you just try to put solutions in and try to throw stuff in there, if you're really feeling a certain way and you haven't acknowledged that and really taken inventory for yourself and be able to understand the fact that you may not be feeling all that great about it, then whenever you throw all that other stuff at you, it now becomes overwhelming and now becomes huge monumental tasks. And now it becomes something that you might not be able to accomplish because you're not feeling up to par and you feel down in the dumps and you feel depressed and you're not feeling where you need to be. Does that make sense? Because if you think about it, we have to get ourselves in a place where we can try to move forward. And it's hard to do when you're told you can't go places. And it's hard to do when you're told you can't buy things and you can't go different things and state parks are down and beaches are closed and different playgrounds are closed for the kids. Now it's all just self-quarantined and we're all doing it within the confines of our homes and our families. I know it's not easy. It's difficult. But at the end of the day, you have your health. And at the end of the day, we're working towards great things. Still, even if it feels like the world is on pause. I woke up this morning, I said to myself, what day is today? I'm thinking to myself, I always knew when a Monday was because that's when my work week starts, right? So I'm going to be able to be out in the field, I'll be at the office, and then I got to be on the road, traveling from store to store, doing all kinds of stuff. And then I thought to myself, I don't even know what day it is right now. Is it Monday or is it Thieves Day? Like, what day is this? I have no idea because it just feels like everything has been pretty much put on hold. But it hasn't. Life still goes on, and we still keep moving. We just do it differently. We have a different dynamic of what we're faced with. We have a different landscape that we're navigating through. We have a different outcome that might be coming from it. Whatever it is that we're working on, let's keep focusing on being better from today to tomorrow. Be one step better tomorrow than you are today. The same exact concept that we had when we were able to get out and do all those things. Here's the added benefit to all this. If you do have family around and you have that opportunity to be able to reconnect with people, then do that. The second part of one of the most important parts of what Brene Brown brings to the table is human connection. She talks about how we're wired. We're wired in a way that we need connection with people, whether we like it or not, whether we try to be able to say I'm an introvert and I don't want to be around people or whatever. Introverts are suddenly realizing, holy smokes, I do miss some interaction with people. Extroverts are especially feeling like, oh my goodness, I miss people so bad. So why do you think there's such an explosion where 800 and whatever, 53% of Zoom customers have just exploded? Google Hangouts, Skype calls, all this different stuff. All the carriers are saying that all of their data usage is way up and their phone calls actually have gone up 50%. And the length of the phone calls have gone up 50% because people need to connect with people. Your connection is so important. And when you're feeling that first stage of what I talked about, the vulnerability of everything, when you have the feelings of I feel depressed or I feel down or whatever, human connection can help you in so many ways. I know you guys have seen a couple social media posts, just a few of them, I'm sure, where I said, reach out to somebody, make a phone call, make a video call, do something to be able to connect with those folks because it's so important, especially folks that are by themselves. I mean, folks that have been able to do this by themselves or whatever else, or whether they're single, maybe they're widowed, maybe there's different situations, or maybe they're elderly and they just live at home, but people go to visit them all the time. So you don't really see the major difference of what's going on. But now they're by themselves and they really can't be susceptible to everything else. So now they have to speak through windows or over phones, but call them daily. Do it. We need the connection. They need the connection. We need to stay in this space where we've got to stay connected with each other. Whether you like it or not, and you say that you don't need the human connection, you don't need that daily check-in or whatever, you do. I'm coming to realize that I do as well. I'm a fairly big introvert when I'm at home. When I'm outside or I've got different stuff going on or I'm in social media aspect of it or I'm at work and whatever, I'm an extrovert, absolutely, because that's part of my job and also part of my brand and part of the different things that I do. But when I go home, I'm usually very much an introvert. When we first moved into this neighborhood, which is about 200 units in the neighborhood in the housing homeowners association, my wife forced me to go out and meet some of the guys in the neighborhood. She said, listen, they're having a poker game. Why don't you go hang out with those guys? Why don't you get on some of the text threads? Why don't you go do it? And I was like, yeah, I'm good. I've worked all day. I've been around people. I'm all set. And she's like, you got to go. And now I crave it. Now that I've met them, been a part of this group, part of the guys in the neighborhood, joking and having a good time and those kind of things, I crave everything about it. And now even more specifically with this whole Corona and COVID-19 pandemic, our interaction is even that much less, which it shouldn't be. We should be connecting even more because we have time to do so. We have time to reach out to folks. We have time to connect, even if it isn't with a handshake or a hug, but it's with a phone call or a Skype or a video or whatever it is. We're in this whole thing together, and human connection is even that much more important now. So when Brene talks about vulnerability and human connection as two of the biggest topics of the things that she talks about what we need as human beings and to be successful moving forward, remember those things as we're navigating this weird, crazy time that we're living in. Remember what that looks like. Remember what vulnerability might look like, and know that you have to take inventory of it. You've got to right size yourself with that, to know how you're feeling, to know where you're at and why you're feeling the way that you are. And maybe there's some things you can put in place to either remedy that or fix that, or how about just feel that way? Right? I mean, like we talked about before, it's okay not to be okay. How about just getting to a place where you're like, this just sucks. I mean, literally, it just sucks. I now have to be a full-time employee, whether I'm working from home, and now I've got to be a full-time teacher because my kids are working from home. I got to cook dinners. I got to do all this stuff along with working if you're a full-time person. Or how about the people that don't have jobs anymore, that are afraid of how they're going to make their mortgages or their rent payments, and you just want to say, this is brutal. And you want to be able to just accept the fact that this is what I'm given right now. So how do I change what I have to change? I know a couple friends on social media that have gone out and done things like DoorDash or delivery services or things like that because they have to supplement their income and be able to move forward. And it's a really difficult place to be in. So the vulnerability side of it is how are you feeling about that? Probably pretty crappy about the whole situation, right? We're not feeling that great about it. But the human connection part of it can be used in connection or in conjunction with that. Because if you're feeling a certain way, that human connection can be somebody may understand what you're going through, or maybe they're going through the same situation. And maybe they can relate to you and say, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, or these are some things that tips and pointers that I'm giving. If you're part of communities, Facebook groups, any kind of Twitter groups or anything like that, reach out to those folks. Reach out to some of your online friends, the people that you know that are either going through stuff or can relate to where you're at, or they know your normal positive self, but they know they notice that you're not really connecting as much lately, or you're not feeling that connection, or there's not a lot of positive energy or excitement or anything going on right now. So you're feeling kind of down in the dumps, and they know it, and they can see it from afar, even if it's online. And so connect with each other. Reach out to somebody. Find an accountability buddy. Connect with people. Human connection is so, so important. And it can also help you down the road. Let's say we get back to the way the regular world was living. Now you've made an even deeper connection with somebody that you can now use that as a resource for yourself. Maybe when future things happen, or maybe when you need a job reference or something's going on, now you're building this connection and you're building this community around you. And you can really utilize that as you move forward. So the two things in closing here on this podcast are vulnerability and human connection. Very well said by Brene Brown in all of her books and all of the different TED Talks and all the things that she's done, all of her speaking engagements. She's real, she's honest, she's open, and she just tells it like it is, which I love that about her. And when I saw that interview on 60 Minutes, it really inspired me because I'm like, wow, she can be as real as she can be, but she's including boundaries where people overstep those boundaries with her. She was talking about how her friends were saying that when she's out to dinner with them, people will come up and say, listen, I'm channeling my inner Brene Brown, and she tells me to be brave, so I'm coming over to talk to you. And she still has to set those boundaries, but she's brave enough to say, listen, now's not the time. Let's talk about this. You've got the tools, you got the resources, go. Do the things that you have to do. Vulnerability, human connection, these are super, super important things, guys. And in this time that we're living in right now, and the struggles that we're going through right now, these are two things that you can tap into that are changeable by you. You can change the dynamic of both of these things. You can stop squelching your true feelings of where you're at or the struggles that you're going through right now and just shutting them aside because you want to be tough and not vulnerable. You can change the momentum of that. The second thing is with the human connection, we have all the tools at our disposal to increase and improve our human connection, reaching out to folks and being there for others, including ourselves. Because as we invest in them, it comes back on us tenfold, if you think about it. You make them happy. What do you think that should do for you is make you happy as well. Okay, guys. So hang in there. We're all in this together. We've got all these different resources at our disposal, whether it's social media, whether it's online resources, whether it's studies, books, videos, or whatever. You've got at your disposal to utilize. Lean in and channel into those things. But also remember, now might be a great time for you to start to do some of the things you've always wanted to do. If you wanted to be an artist, great. Maybe now's the time that you start to pick up the paintbrush. If you wanted to be a musician, now's the time maybe to go online with some YouTube videos and start to learn how to pick the guitar. Whatever it is, find your resource and go and do it. And let's all hang in there for each other, okay? And let's always reach out with people. Let's all make a positive influence on each other. And just know I'm thinking about each and every one of you as you're going through the things that you have to go through. And I'm here to be able to help support you along the way, okay? Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Please do us a favor and leave feedback and a 5-star rating on whatever platform that you use.